Have you ever wondered how modern jazz players like Michael Brecker, Bob Berg or Chris Potter get such a contemporary sound out of their diminished scales? Well, that's exactly what we're going to have a look at in this lesson. So let's get into it. So the diminished scale is a really popular sound in jazz improvisation, and for those of you that haven't come across this scale before, it's basically an 8-note scale that is built tone, semitone, tone, semitone, tone, semitone. And there's two versions of it. There's one that's called the whole half, because it goes tone, semitone. And then if you start on the second note, you'll be going semitone, tone, semitone, tone. And that's called the half whole diminished. But ultimately, they're exactly the same structure. Now, these became really popular in the kind of post-bop period. So players like Sonny Stitt and John Coltrane and then Phil Woods use this scale a lot in their improvisation, but they always use it in a certain way. Now, because it's got this symmetricality to it, these tones and semitones, you can create really melodic and beautiful patterns out of it that repeat and repeat and repeat, and that's really nice to hear and really melodic. Here's just a small selection of those kind of patterns. This means that it's really identifiable. As soon as you hear it, once you know what this sound is, you'll go, oh, that's the sound of the diminished scale. Now, if you move forward to the modern players like Brecker and Bob Berg and Chris Potter, then you'll notice that this sound is really well masked. Now, they're using this scale all the time too, but it's really hard to identify. So in this lesson, we're going to look at 4 key ways that these players change the diminished scale to make it sound much more edgy and vertical and more modern. By the way, if you're unsure about the diminished scale in general and want to know how to play it better on saxophone, there's an entire course based on the diminished scale and how to get it into your playing, including how to play the actual scale, all the different variants of it, and starting to improvise with it in Sax School. There's still a 14-day free trial, so check out that lesson. So method 1 is to break up those intervals. So instead of constantly getting the sound of tones and semitones repeating after each other, we'd like to break this up and get some different intervals within that structure. And the most simple way of doing this is to actually leave out some of the notes. So we could leave out 4 of the notes and just end up with 4 left, or we could leave out 3 of the notes. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to leave out 3 of the notes. So 8 minus 3 leaves 5, and what we'll end up with is a pentatonic based from the notes of a diminished scale. So in this first example, we're going to take a B-flat diminished scale. Now remember that this could be called B-flat, C-sharp, E or G whole half diminished scale, but it could also be called C, E-flat, F-sharp or A half whole diminished scale. They're exactly the same structures, and remember there's only 3 of these structures to learn across your entire saxophone. So just for the purposes of this lesson, we're just going to call it the B-flat diminished scale. Okay, so we're going to just leave out some notes. So let's leave out, I don't know, the second note C, let's leave out the F sharp, and let's leave out the A. So we've left out 3 notes, we've got 5 notes remaining. Let's see what that sounds like. Now you can hear that just playing that out of context, it has a really different sound to the basic up and down diminished scale, and these really pretty symmetrical patterns that kind of stick to the intervals that are built within it. So let's hear it in the context. I'm just going to play it over the dominant chord in a 2-5-1 progression. So you can hear that gives a really specific, unique and quite modern sound. So let's try a different one. Let's leave out the C, the B flat and the G this time, and we'll get a slightly different structure. Let's see what that sounds like. Once again, you can hear that it really changes the sound of the notes of the diminished scale, just leaving those notes out, and gives a completely different flavour to the previous one we did. So let's hear this one in context as well over that 2-5-1. So in method 1, we left out some notes. In method 2, we're going to add in some extra notes. So we're going to add in an extra chromatic note between the notes of one of those tones. And this is a really effective way of changing the sound as well. So in this example, I'm going to take every tone within the diminished scale and I'm going to add a passing note between it. Let's see what that sounds like. Now, even though that idea is based on the diminished scale, you'll notice as I play it through my range, I've actually played every single note of the chromatic scale. So it kind of changes the vibe of the sound and helps mask that regulated tone, semitone progression that we get through the scale. So let's try a slightly different version of that. This time I'm still going to put the chromatic passing note between one of the tones, except I'm going to connect it to a little bit more of the scale. And this actually sounds a little bit like the beginning of a bebop scale, if you've ever come across those. So let's just see what that sounds like. So you can hear once again that changes the character of the diminished scale. So let's hear both of those in context of a 2-5-1. By the way, if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to click like and subscribe. It lets us know that you want more lessons like this. And if you want to download any of the resources that go with this lesson, the PDFs, and there'll be some backing tracks, then you can find all that in saxschoolonline.com. Just click the link below. There's still a 14-day trial. There's loads of lessons in there on jazz and improvisation and many other things, so please check it out. Now, both those methods involved adding or subtracting notes from the actual structure of the diminished scale. But what if we just want to use the diminished scale as it is without adding or taking anything away? Well, a lot of these patterns repeat every minor third. That's the structure of the diminished scale and a diminished arpeggio for that matter. Now, what if we were to take shapes from the scale that were so jarring when we move them around in the usual minor third interval movements that a lot of these patterns are created from, the actual individual melodic cells were so kind of abstract and jarring to our ears that we barely recognize the sound of the diminished scale, and you'll find particularly Brecker using this idea all the time. Now, we're going to look at two versions again of this. Now, the first one's really interesting. So basically, we're going to find the interval of a fifth, which occurs 4 times within the diminished scale. So let's say an A to an E. And then inside that interval is the interval of a fourth, the B flat and the E flat. So you've kind of got a fifth with the fourth on the inside of it. Now, another way of looking at the notes that this creates is we've actually ended up with 2 tritones a semitone apart. And in serial music, this is called a Z cell, which I imagine Brecker may have used to discover this shape in the diminished scale. He was really into composition and did a lot of study of composition, and without a doubt probably came across this idea and realised it was a cell within the diminished scale. So we're going to take this Z cell idea and we're just going to move it in minor thirds. Bear in mind, when I get to the end of this little pattern, I will have played all the notes of the diminished scale as part of this series. So you can hear with that it makes your mind go absolutely crazy. It sounds so strange and angular when you play it. Yeah, I'm just using the notes of the diminished scale. So let's hear that in context over a 2-5-1. Now, there's some great voicings that piano players use from the diminished scale as well, and this next one is one of those voicings just turned into a melodic cell idea. So basically, if we were to start within our B-flat diminished scale on the E-flat, you'll notice that below that we've got a minor third, the note C. Below that there's a fourth, the note G, and below that is another minor third, the note E. So the outside areas of this shape create a major 7 shape, which is quite a jarring sound once again. And also you'll notice if you add these notes together, you've got a C major triad and a C minor triad within those notes. So it's quite a confusing aural shape. It's both major and minor. It's got some really sharp intervals in there. So let's see what this one sounds like. And now let's hear what this sounds like over a 2-5-1 in context. So if you want to make your diminished lines sound even more contemporary using these 3 methods, what you can do is you can either mix together the 3 methods in one melodic line, or as another way of doing it, you can alternate the direction of your melodic cells. So you could have one idea from one of these methods going upwards, followed by a different method from one of these ideas going downwards. And that creates real tension and really helps to once again hide the traditional sound of the diminished scale within your lines. So let's have a listen to a couple of examples of that. So definitely try out these techniques, leaving some notes out, adding some chromatic passing where those tones are, and also finding some really angular shapes within the diminished scale. And let me know in the comments which one was your favourite sound out of the selection we looked at today. Until next time, take care and I'll see you then. Bye bye.